I was diagnosed with severe eczema, allergies, and asthma at the age of 2 months old. So all I've ever known my entire life was illness. I learned to scratch my skin before I could walk or talk, and my life was pretty much all about survival, all the things I couldn't do, all the places I couldn't go. I spent a lot of time in hospitals with doctors who put on latex gloves before they would touch me. They wanted to tie me to a hospital bed to stop me from scratching. So it sort of became who I was very early on. I was always extremely ashamed of the way I looked. I was covered in eczema all the time. I would have violent reactions to chemicals, dogs, horses, dust, everything. I felt guilty because my parents did everything they could, taking me to doctors all over the world, just trying their best, and yet I was just getting worse by the day. In 2013, I started my first business, which was a food business. I wrote a cookbook with free from recipes, so I tried to heal myself through food. And of course, I only got worse. And I did that for a few years, feeling like the biggest fraud in the world, because I was doing all these recipes, I was advocating a lifestyle that was supposed to help, and I didn't look the part. And I did that for a few years, getting worse. 2017, I started my next business with a co-founder, and about 4 months in, we got into a legal battle, which was traumatic and really sad. And so a year later, I was diagnosed with trauma, at which point I had stopped sleeping completely. I'd never really slept because I was only scratching myself and sort of just trying to get through the day. But at that point, I was covered in eczema from pretty much the knees up, and I became suicidal. I didn't really want to go out anymore because I kept looking at people, and I never knew if they looked at me with disgust or what was in their eyes, and of course, I interpreted it in my own way. So I spent a year just not wanting to go out anymore at all, and the trauma diagnosis and not sleeping finally sort of tipped me over where I didn't know what to do anymore, and I had tried it already at that point, tried everything at that point. And so I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what that was, and it felt like it was nothing or going back to the doctors that had told me I was sick my entire life. So I did decide to change, and at the end of beginning of 2019, I decided to stop, and I stopped, and I started reading books, and it took me a year before I eventually had my first pajama party with Dr. Joe in my living room in London, where he popped up in my YouTube feed. And so when I saw the first video, I know it was what was going to help me. And so I started doing the work. And for the first year, nothing changed. So I did the work.
Whoa. Let's not slide over that teaching point. So you were getting worse. You had a couple events in your life that caused you to move into that fight or flight response. Your immune system became more compromised. You got more symptoms, you felt more out of balance chemically, emotionally, physically, your body was in a downward spiral, and took you pretty much a long time to get to that point, to condition your body to that point, so it could actually take some time to uncondition it, yes or no? And that process is not a linear process. Because when you look in the mirror and you see that you haven't changed, then you have to make up your mind if you're still going to do it or not. You know, and that's the character in the VR headset that's looking for evidence with their senses. So you got to go all in. You got to go every day, and it becomes about that change. It becomes about the beliefs. It becomes about the way we speak. It becomes about our responses and our reactions. You've got to denature that character, and it's a biological death. And the fact that she decided not to go anywhere, that is such a strong ingredient for so many people in this work that do actually make up their mind to change. They just don't want to see anybody. They don't want to go anywhere. They don't want to return any texts. They just need a little bit of time to decide what they want to change. And perfect example during the pandemic, a great opportunity to really nest and really go in the cocoon and really begin to make those changes. And it's a process. And 1 whole year staying with it.
18 months.
18 months. She could have stopped at 17 months and 29 days. Thank God. Anyway, go ahead.
I think actually the biggest part of the work, I mean, I did the meditations and they were not fantastic by any means. I did them, but it wasn't like I was out in outer space. But what I did do all day long was listen to my own thoughts. So I was alone in my tiny little apartment, and I would quickly realize that I had created it all. I just didn't know, I didn't want it. And so when I realized what was in my head, when every time I looked in the mirror, I said, the voice said, "You look horrible." And then for about a year, I was like, "Yep." And then, I went back to scratching myself. And then slowly into that process, I would look myself in the mirror and the voice would go, "You look horrible." And I was like, no, that's not me anymore. And so when I started hearing those patterns, it changed. And so 18 months passed by and nothing happened. I got a lot worse, in fact. I was working with a lot of beautiful people, some healers, and doing all sorts of things, but they were very focused on the issue. And so the more aware I became of all of my food allergies, the worse the symptoms got. So all of a sudden I would have large blood blisters in my mouth, and there were all these things happening just because I was so aware of what I shouldn't be doing. But,
or anticipating an outcome.
Yeah. And that outcome was far more worse than I could have anticipated. 18 months in, I started sleeping for the first time in my life, and I still remember the first morning I woke up for the first time in my life, having slept through the night, waking up without heart palpitations, without stress, like anxiety, and thinking, why didn't anyone tell me? Like, this is amazing. And so I wanted to go to a week-long. I was scheduled in for one in 2020 in Costa Brava. That was postponed twice and then canceled. Then I was registered into London. That was postponed twice, supposed to happen later this year. And so in the last summer, I decided, what if I could set an intention whereby I would heal before an event? Because I don't know.
Whoa. Don't let that slip by unnoticed by you. That's a decision. And there's power in choice when you make it in the present moment. That's a big explosion in the field. And that possibility is now in her awareness. So now she can do what? She could do the meditations with more intention. She can live her life with more conviction, more will, more passion. Now she's got skin in the game. No pun intended.
So I set the intention, and I start seeing myself up on the stage, telling the story about how I healed before I came to an event. And so a couple months later, October last year, a few months ago, it was as if somebody had pressed a button and it all just fell off of me. And
we all see that her condition was a blessing. We can all see that she would have never changed if she didn't have that irritation, if she didn't have that condition, if she didn't ask herself, do I live like this for the rest of my life? Is there some other possibility? What did she do? She started learning. She started learning information and knowledge and all the raw materials of all that new information. actually had her come up with the possibility that she could actually be an integral part of her own healing. Imagine that, just with a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of information. The initiation of that information on her own. I know it's difficult to do it on your own. I know meditations can be difficult, but you stay with it. You stay conscious. You keep doing it. Remind yourself. You don't default back to the old personality. And how many times do we have to forget and go unconscious until we stop forgetting and start remembering and staying conscious? That's called change. And her autonomic nervous system started to regulate. And it took a good portion of her life to keep it dysregulated. And that was a very familiar state of being for her. And gracefully and slowly, the body begins to follow the mind and it moves out of the past. And she took that body out of the past right into the present moment. And every day conditioning the brain and body to the future. Over and over again, over and over again. It would make sense to us then that the condition still lives in the old personality. It still lives in the old personality. She's somebody else. She's her future self. She became that person. It wasn't about her skin condition changing. She started to change. It was her change. One moment of feedback, one night of sleep, and she knew from that point forward what happened. She knew it. It was a surprise. It was an unknown. She didn't expect to sleep through the night. She just woke up in the morning. That's all she needed. Now she knew she was regulating her autonomic nervous system back into balance. And the autonomic nervous system controls and coordinates all those systems. It's what creates balance and health. Stress is the imbalance of the autonomic nervous system because of an emergency, an alarm. She went out of the alarm system. And growth and repair sometimes takes time. And sometimes growth and repair isn't a linear process. But we can stand for her because now it's a blessing for her in her life. She would have never been the person she is today without that condition and her willingness to get beyond it. She is the living example of truth. Would you agree?
I used to think about what it was that was so bad that I had done in a past life that I deserved this skin condition and all the things that I was struggling with. And now standing here, all I can think is, how was I so blessed to be part of this community? Like, I'd do it again.
You know what? You're in a new life, in the same life. That was your past life. Now you're in a whole new life. And don't ever let that spiritual mumbo jumbo get to you, like you did something wrong in the last life and well, now you're going to torture yourself. What? We're not punished. We're not punished for our sins. We're punished by our sins. And sin is an attitude. That's it. That's it. Change your attitude. Change the way you think and feel. Change that. Experiment with it.
And you are beautiful.
Yes. Tell them what you told me about your shirt. Tell them what you told me about wearing what you were going to wear when you were on the stage.
The smallest piece of clothing that I own. Because I can.
In a new body. In a new life. In a whole new future. In a whole new time. She got the upgrade. She got the upgrade. She got the upgrade to the character and the VR headset. New body, new environment, whole new time. Thank you so much for doing the work. Thank you.